finally, I think it's the first time it's happening here in Israel, that we have the president of the ISU coming here for the Space Week and to speak with you in an open conversation, an open house about ISU, ISU family, stars, space, whatever you want. It's my great, great, great pleasure to invite John to the stage. John, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I bring you a chair?
No, I'll stand. Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Yeah, I added 50 pounds to my luggage coming to Israel, but at least I know I'm going home 50 pounds lighter. Well, this is my second time in Israel. I was last year in 2018 when I was part of the governor of Florida's economic mission to Israel, and I was able to see a lot of the country. And people often ask me, what's the most memorable thing of that trip? And then somebody asked me again on this trip, and I'm quite serious about it. The best tomato I ever had in my entire life was in Israel. And I'm really glad to be back here. And I did try to get here earlier this last year, and circumstances didn't allow, so I'm allowed to be here today, and I'm very grateful for it. I will also tell you that I was supposed to be a keynote speaker at a major space event in Orlando this week, and I canceled because I thought it was more important to be here in Israel. And I might not get invited back to the other one, but we'll see. I gave them a mission patch. They're okay. But Israel is very important. And I just have to say that since I started at ISU on September 1st of 2024, it's a daily conversation. Israel, Israel, Israel. I'm not involved in the WhatsApps. I know there's a lot of them out there, maybe one more official than another, but I hear a lot of things about activity. And I would say that this group in this country is the most active group of the entire alumni population. And I think the busiest person in the entire 6,000 plus, we did cross 6,000 this year, in the entire network is our alumna, Melody, who never sleeps, is very persistent, and is a huge advocate for ISU, and she represents all of your voices. And then another thank you I have to make is to Eitan. And when I joined ISU, I was very familiar with the fact that we had chancellors from the beginning of the history of ISU, and we started with some very famous names along that journey. And it was very important for me as president to make sure that whoever was coming in as our chancellor really believed in ISU. And candidly, there wasn't an affiliation with ISU, but it was not a hard sell to convince Eitan to come on board when he heard about what our plans are as we move forward and what truly our mission is. And I know that he gets a lot of opportunities, and I was very grateful and thankful that he agreed to come on board as our chancellor for the next 3 years. And I will tell you that in the last 5 months, he has been an incredible contributor behind the scenes to ISU, and really is our chief ambassador. And we're just beginning, and that's a really important step for ISU as we move forward. And then the most common term that I've heard in the duration that I've been here so far is ISU changed my life. And I will say that ISU is changing my life every single day. And one of the things that I wanted to do was figure out, how do we use that tagline? Because when people say, what is ISU? Just ask somebody. It changed my life. So we're actually protecting that term legally. It's complicated. And we have recently brought on board an agency called Astro Agency to handle all of ISU's branding, marketing, public relations, and communications. And we're going to do something with that. And you're going to see a new look and feel of ISU. The logo is not changing. The mission patch is our mission. It's not the logo, but we're going to be utilizing these, and maybe even a new upgraded version of a logo that'll be used in certain circumstances. But that team's behind us, and they're listening to us, and we're making some interesting change happen in terms of who we are and selling our story. And if somebody says, what are your 2 most important assets? It's the ISU brand, and it's you. It's our global population, our alumni network. That is what ISU is. And we're going to come up with new ways to showcase you and your success, not make it about ISU, but what we did to help change your life. And then let's talk about what you're doing in your own professional career. So some of you have heard my story, and I'll try to be relatively quick. But I became familiar with ISU many years ago, and my dream as a little kid was to be an astronaut, and I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. and fell in love with airplanes at the age of 5 when I had to evacuate a Boeing 747 that caught on fire. We jumped out the side of the airplane, went down the slide. I was wearing a U.S. Air Force pilot suit, and it was airplane, airplane, airplane ever since. So I ended up doing a TED Talk on that and how that experience changed my entire life and continues to do so. And once I fell in love with airplanes, I then fell in love with spaceships. And never to this, in my wildest imagination, that I ever think I would meet an astronaut, yet alone be in environments like we are here today. And it's a very special week here in Israel with Israel Space Week. And I hope you realize how lucky you are to have all of these people under one roof, if you will, in Israel. And it's just quite amazing. So after I became familiar with ISU throughout my own career, about 10 years ago, I think it was 11 now, the presidency came up and I decided to apply. And I was one of the 2 finalists. And to summarize, I didn't get the job. Another president did. I might have been too innovative, too entrepreneurial, too technology focused, too futuristic. Okay, timing wasn't right. So a second time, the position came available a little over 5 years ago, roughly, and I decided I was going to apply again, and I became one of the 2 finalists. And again, I think I was a little too entrepreneurial, a little too innovative, a little too technology focused. Somebody said I was too American, and I thought, okay, well, the third time the position came available, my wife said, absolutely not. You've been rejected twice. You're not going to handle it a third time. And I said, but you don't understand, honey. They're going to offer me the job because I'm going to tell them they're going to give me the job. And I'm going to tell them, no, I'm not taking the job. I just wanted to say that I made it. So we were in safari in South Africa, and we didn't have access to technology for literally 6 days. And when we did get to our lodge eventually and was able to get on Wi-Fi, there were multiple phone calls, emails, and text messages from our chair, Chris Soliberger. He was really nice at the beginning of the week. And then days go by and his tone started to change. And I was like, this is a different side of Chris I've never heard before. And he's like, at least give us the courtesy of a call back. So I finally called him. I'm like, Chris, I'm so sorry. I've been on safari for 6 days. I didn't have technology. Yes, I'll take the job. Let's go. And that was in July of 24. And September 1, they needed the permanent president in the position, and it was a very quick transition. So I had a lot of exposure to ISU loosely. I knew that there were several challenges as well as opportunities. And when I run an organization, I always want to be aware of the external and internal trends, challenges, and opportunities so that we can develop the right strategies. So I came in and did a real deep due diligence dive, the deepest one that I've ever done in my entire career, because I found some things and I said, geez, we got to go deeper. So you lift the hood and you see where the oil's leaking and you plug the holes and then you add some new parts and you move towards the future. So I did what I'll call a survive, adapt, recover, and rethink process and said, wow, ISU has so much opportunity, but it's operating like a scrappy startup. And we're too old to be a scrappy startup. And we haven't evolved in terms of the business model. And we haven't evolved in terms of how do you fund a university in the future and make sure that it's financially self-sustaining. So this is gonna change. It already is. And I just said to Pete, I said, I want you to be my chief fundraiser. He asked you for money 4 times and did it so diplomatically. And we are going to raise money. And it's never been done. We've been relying on the traditional sources that have decreased. The hockey stick doesn't go up, it goes down. And there really hasn't been in recent years any thought as to how do you sustain a university if your funding decreases or disappears completely. And what we wanted to do is create a real strategic plan, and let's implement it in scalable phases and do so at an accelerated rate. So candidly, I took on more internal hands-on control than I thought I was going to have, and that I'd be more external, really working with the globe and the network and the partners and bringing the resources to ISU. And that got a little bit delayed because I have to wear an internal hat and an external hat. That's now changing, thankfully. But our Moonshot 2030 strategy was created, and in hindsight, we probably should have called it the Marshot 2040 and really looked out there. But we didn't pick the year 2030 because it was a 5-year strategic plan. We picked 2030 because that's the forecasted year in which humans and technology collide with each other to the point that technology continues to accelerate at a rate that humans don't have the ability to adapt. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but we're making that assumption. So the good news about not having a lot of changes over history at ISU is that we are now not bound by any kind of rope that ties us to the ground. We can actually leapfrog into the future. So the plan was approved by the board, and there were several things that obviously I can't say in a public environment, but I will tell you that I have 100% board support to the point that we can see the light and we are going to get there. And yes, we have some challenges, and ISU's always had challenges, particularly with the financial situation, but we have to be more focused on revenue and expenses and profit and loss. And when I used those 4 words in my very first staff meeting, people looked at me, "But sir, we're a nonprofit organization. We're not supposed to make money." And I said, well, we're going to have to change the culture. We are a nonprofit organization, but we're going to be profitable, and we're going to reinvest that into the expansion of ISU. So when we think about the history of how ISU ended up in France, there are several reasons, and there were other countries that were competing, and it was France, Germany, Canada, and Japan. And France was selected because they came to the table with resources. Funding resources, a physical campus that was custom built for us, an international airport with great connectivity, access to space infrastructure. Today, some of those challenges are that we don't have the funding mechanisms that we used to have. We don't have an international airport for connectivity any longer because the French government relies on rail now more than air. And the access to the space infrastructure that we used to have has sort of disappeared over time. And there's some other contributing factors at more of a local and regional level, which is forcing us to reevaluate, where should ISU be? And there are a lot of rumors out there about what may or may not be happening, but the candid truth is that we have to look at our central campus operations. And we also recognize that the majority of people that have gone through our programs have actually never been to Strasbourg, France. They've been to programs all over the world, like here. How many people in this room have been to Strasbourg for an ISU program? How many of you have been to an ISU program, but not in France? See, that's the majority of our globe. And that's something that's really important to think about. So I came up with this idea of creating a hub and spoke concept that really comes from my aviation background. What if we had a hub, and that hub connected secondary airports, if you will, that we could filter traffic back and forth. And these hubs had a physical focus on certain types of subject matter so they don't compete with each other, but they complement, and it allows for the mobility of people to move around. So then I looked at the 3 I's: international, intercultural, and interdisciplinary. Okay, so you may or may not know, but in September, when we did the opening ceremony for our MSS class that's in session right now, we added a 4th I. And we're better to talk about that in Israel, the innovation nation. We added innovative to the 4 I's. And when I started to look at this hub and spoke concept, it was only about 6 months ago where I actually got my hands on the original business plan for ISU, and that's what the founders envisioned: a hub and spoke network all over the world that would link space, whether it was public and then the private sector, as we know now in the environment that we are in. So the Moonshot strategy focuses on several pillars, and the primary pillars are revenue diversification through programs, events, and services. The second pillar is on philanthropy, and ISU has never pursued a formal fundraising strategy, a global fundraising strategy. And we're going to turn 40 years old in April of 27. So that number 40, whether it's euros or US dollars, we're going to use that, and we're now putting together an actual fundraising campaign that's going to go out and raise 40 million in whatever currency, not by the year 2030. It may happen sooner, it may happen later, but it's a campaign for awareness as we celebrate our 40th anniversary in the not too distant future. But the days of ISU relying on others to fund us are over, and we are going to be a financially self-sustaining organization. And we've plugged some holes on the ship. It's up, it's erect. We know where we're going, we know where the port is, and it's going to take us a little time to get there as we go through some turbulent waters. Some of them are internal and some of them are external and beyond our control. But we have to adapt to this new environment that we are in, and we have to be the International Space University. And I'm trying to legally protect like the Ohio State, because that's what ISU is and always should be. We need to become the go-to. There's also been a belief over several years that there's no competition. ISU doesn't compete with anybody, and that's just false. ISU has a lot of competition from existing universities, colleges, training organizations, technology. AI is a competitor. One of the other things that we haven't done very well is actually brought in emerging technology into the ISU environment. So the days of pencils and papers and Excel sheets are about to go out the window. And I made a very strong commitment to invest into emerging tech. And we just acquired a learning management software system, an LMS. And all of our programs, whether they're in person, whether they're long, they're short, they're online, are all going to be on the LMS, and that's also going to create new ways to update our curriculum so that you're not getting the same lecture for 20 years in a row and the same textbook that doesn't make any sense anymore. And our faculty and our instructors are going to go through a formal training program that's recurrent, just as pilots do flying airplanes, so that they're always at the forefront, and every time a course is taught, it's the most modern content that is necessary. So with that said, we're also looking at our whole global instructor model. And we are positioning ISU for institutional accreditation. And right now, we are not qualified to get an institutional accreditation. So we're setting us up to be able to do so, which means that there are several internal changes that are in process right now so that we are positioned to be able to do that in terms of the credentials of our instructors, in terms of the curriculum that we have in our programs, physical infrastructure, fundraising capabilities, and then research. Are we a research university or are we not? And there was a real debate about that, and I made a decision. ISU is going to be a research institution, and when we hire faculty in the future as the resources come in, we're hiring instructors and we're hiring researchers. And faculty generally are graded on their teaching, their research, and their service contributions. And we're going to be able to handpick people so that we can focus, well, where's your energy best utilized for the mission of ISU as we move forward? And we're in the process of finalizing the structure of what that's going to look like as we move forward. But we are going to pursue a U.S. accreditation body that does accredit international organizations. And we're looking at the two leading ones out of the US, and that will up our game in terms of quality, the deliverables that we have to put out there, and then we'll be able to apply for this accreditation, and then we will get it, and that also increases our opportunities to get funding for people going through our programs, primarily on the degree side of things, but it opens up new sources that we currently do not have. It opens up new sources for research opportunities in terms of how we can apply for grants. You may or may not know that we do have a U.S. legal entity out of Massachusetts where we were originally created. We were going to move that legal entity to a different state and decided not to do it, but now we can do doing business in other states. And we're going to use that legal entity as a resource to create new opportunities that we have not pursued, particularly when it comes to finding grant funding opportunities to support research, emerging technology, physical infrastructure, and personnel. And to have a successful organization in any environment, you have to have the right people, the right plan, and the right money. And we have the right plan. We have people, but we need more of the right people. We need new skills to come into our organization. And I'd like to say we have money, but we don't. So we are going to go and get the right money with this global fundraising strategy, and we're going to be out there, not afraid to make the asks. And one of the things that we have as a challenge as an international organization is that we don't have a culture and a mindset with our students going through our programs about paying it forward when you have the opportunity to do so. So we're really good with the time and the talent, and we're going to do a better job of utilizing that. But the treasure, the fundraising, the philanthropic donations is almost zero at the university, and we're going to have to change that, and that is a moonshot to be able to accomplish that successfully. And we're going to try to embed that into our culture with all new people coming through our program so they better understand. And another thing that's kind of important to us as we move forward, and I say kind of in quotes because it's not kind of, it's extremely important. ISU is you. And I'd like to say that we're going to re-engage with the alumni, but the fact is we've never engaged with the alumni. There's never been a formal strategy of communications and in both directions. So I have made a commitment. The job description's done. It'll be posted probably next week to hire, in quote, a director of alumni affairs that will be responsible for engagement, and that person will write the strategy of how we have our outreach programs, how we highlight your successes, elevating ISU in terms of communication, so there are structured communications. If you look at our website today versus maybe 6 months ago, the website is much different today. It's not perfect, but it's much better than where it was. Candidly, the website needs to be thrown in the garbage can, and we need to start it all over again, but that requires resources. And we're going to do that and put tools behind it and make it effective for recruitment, for fundraising, and all kinds of data reporting. So we're moving into a data dashboard system. I'm a huge fan of informatics and analytics, and I want to know live 24/7, where's the fuel in the tank? And I want everybody in our team to know, and then what kind of data do we communicate publicly so that you get to see that data as well. So I will tell you that we have a candidate for the position. It actually happened as a result of being here in Israel this week, and it was somebody that completely captured me by surprise that had an interest in the job. And of course, we're interviewing candidates once the job is posted, but this one blew my mind, and I think it would blow your mind too if you knew who the person was. But it would bring something incredible to ISU. So we're going to explore this a little further, and it's also a good time to talk about another announcement. As you know, we have our MSS, our Master of Space Studies. We're putting increased investment into that program to raise the number of participants in the program. We average about 40 students a year. That's not sustainable. We have to grow it to 100 plus. It's very hard to do in a competitive market that we are in, and only getting more competitive. We are going into the online world, so there's been some sampling of it pre-me. I took that all down, so right now there is no online education. We terminated the relationship with a partner that wasn't working out, and we are, with our LMS system, are going to go online and make ISU more accessible, starting with professional development programs, certifications, different types of stack credentials. But the really cool thing, just before it goes public, is we are launching a brand new degree in March, and we've listened to the industry, we've listened to you, and we've listened to businesses that have challenges that need solutions. It's unreasonable to say, come to ISU, give up your job, and hang out on the campus for 12 to 24 months. What if we could bring ISU to you? What if we could help you solve a problem that you can implement within your environment or advance that level of research? So I'll use sort of a code name right now, but it's an MPhil. Traditionally, it stands for Master of Philosophy, but that's the precursor research degree to a PhD. And the MPhil degree will be in space studies with 3 tracks, and you will be assigned an ISU faculty advisor and an astronaut mentor for the duration of your course. That'll take 12 months to complete if you follow the rules and do it full time, and then there'll be an extension up to 24 months for those that can't invest that time. But you don't have to leave your home or your office. Hopefully corporations will support personnel, but you're going to see this going public in the next few days, and we think it's extremely unique, and we can't find anybody else that's put something like this on the market, and we have some great internal support as that moves forward. There are a lot of other things that are happening at ISU. Most of it is good, and we're in a period of transition, and I am determined not to fail, because failure is not an option in my world. And we are going to be financially self-sustaining, and we've been able to forecast out what that looks like. At what point do we break even, so to speak, and then at what point does ISU become profitable to invest back into the expansion of what we're doing? And as I go back to the idea of a hub and spoke concept, the idea is to have permanent bases of ISU in 4 strategic regions in the world that literally covers the globe, and then the hub and spoke begins to interact with one another. So another great segue, because it wasn't said here tonight, but there's an MOU being put together. It is put together. It's about to be signed with our... Oh, you're not up on the screen. Oh, down on the bottom. Okay, with Rakia, and we're going to have a stronger presence here in Israel. And as we've discussed internally, we're better to go to the Innovation Nation to try a prototype model where hopefully this turns into more of a permanent presence all year round, where there are programs, events, and services happening. And if we can accelerate this and show that the model works and iron out the kinks, then we can adapt that in other parts of the world as well. So that's our goal, but we're starting it here. And like most organizations, we're resource constrained right now, but that's not going to be the future. And yes, we're in some rough waters with some things that we're trying to accomplish. But I brought on somebody this fall to be the executive vice president, which is a title that we haven't had. And I'm training the individual, if you will, to take over the internal operations on a day-to-day basis of ISU so that I can go out and fly the nest and go bring the resources back to ISU. So there's going to be more of an external presence versus an internal presence, and we're almost done with that model, and a few new personnel that have joined our team that do bring right skills and vision to accomplish the mission that we have here at hand. So a lot more going on, and I don't want to take any more time, but I am happy to answer any questions, comments, concerns, good, bad, and ugly. Well, okay, well, thanks for everybody. Okay, good questions, right? Okay, yeah. Okay.
Thanks for, can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks for everything that you're doing. I think I might be the only Israeli that's an ISU alumni and the Singularity University alumni. I met Pete twice, in 2009 and then in 2012 again. And Singularity University kind of changed after I was there a few years later. They became for-profit. And the rumors I heard is that it changed everything the minute they became for-profit. So my question is, have you learned from what happened there and try not to go into the same pitfalls that they went into so that that doesn't happen to ISU, because ISU is too important?
So I'm very familiar with the Singularity model, which is founded on the ISU model. And ISU is not becoming a for-profit organization. We are remaining a non-profit organization. With that said, we are exploring right now the idea of creating a non-governmental organization, an NGO. And we found that there is a very interesting concept out there that really hasn't been prototyped yet, and we could position us to do this to create more of an NGO status. But we are a non-profit organization based in France. We're a nonprofit organization based in the US. That will never change. We also have another legal entity that is a for-profit that really hasn't been used, but it was really created for incubation of companies. And we're exploring how we can better utilize that too. But a true university model should be not-for-profit, but should also have a foundation wing that has special purposes, a special purpose vehicle for all intents and purposes, and a for-profit piece of it that does not impact or harm the programming component of the university. And this allows us to be more diverse in terms of the opportunities that we can secure as we move forward. But there are a lot of lessons to be learned. It's important to know what works and what doesn't, but don't cut and paste and copy others. Learn the lessons, but adapt what works for ISU. And we have a tremendous opportunity, and that's essentially what this moonshot strategy is, and it acknowledges what not to do and what should be done. Yeah. Yes?
When will SSP be in Tel Aviv?
So great question. So SSP is in Strasbourg this coming summer. We purposely delayed the RFP for 27 and beyond because I was not comfortable with the RFP process as it's traditionally been handled. So all of the documents have been redone. They went live on the ISU website this week. So you can actually go to isunet.edu right now, and you'll see SSP, and you'll see all of the different files and the link that you can forward to anybody. And I will tell you that when I first joined ISU, one of the first meetings I had was, why are we not doing SSP in Israel? Well, timing didn't make sense, but we need to, and 27 and onward is open. We still have submissions from countries, including Israel, and I will say that the submission that I reviewed was the best submission that ISU received. There's no question about it. That it doesn't need to be resubmitted if it's the same partner, and I think it's about timing. So what's the state of the world right now? What does it look like in 27? What does 28 look like? I will say that it's coming to Israel. There's no question. It's just when. And I would like it to happen sooner rather than later, but the external environment is the dictator of that, and there's some challenges around that, as you all know, and we're trying to navigate that. And I'm certain this will be a topic at an upcoming meeting that I'll be in next month. But the RFP's out there, and it's a little bit delayed for the right reasons, but it will be in Israel at some point. I'm fairly certain of that. Yep. Anybody else? Yes, sir. How you doing? Talk about a grand entrance. Huh? So we have a couple of our board members. So Ofer, Pete, and thanks for coming. But I'm happy to answer any other questions, or if you have a comment or an idea, we're open to that. And I don't think that we've done a very good job of listening to you. We listen, but we don't listen. And that's changing. And that's part of the commitment to the new position that we're creating, so that the outreach is there and we are listening to you, and again, highlighting your successes. But I'm happy to answer any question that you have. Okay. Oh, yep.
How much do you need per alumni to get to finance?
That's a great question. Well, if you took 6,000 people at $100 or 100 euros, you would not believe how much success that brings to ISU in terms of our next phase. It's not a huge ask. And what I didn't mention, but as part of the strategy, depending on the candidate that comes on, I'm asking this individual to literally write the strategy, because I have success fundraising. This has been a very challenging environment because I can't replicate the same tools that I was able to use because of the global disbursement of our population versus everybody's in the same backyard. And the culture of giving back financially is a challenge, because a lot of cultures don't do that. And sort of the attitude is, well, we have a challenge bringing French students into our programs, because the response is, why would I pay? I can go to school for free. So we deal with a lot of that with some countries as well that we have to address. But I don't want somebody calling you, writing you, emailing you, and you say, oh gosh, they're coming from a checkbook because it's the advancement officer. I want a team that listens and elevates the stories, and that you hear our story, and that we can speak to the heartstrings of our alumni network now and in the future. And my success is not asking for money, but telling a story and speaking to you directly about what I think interests you. And generally, that individual or organization will give back in a much bigger way. And it's not always financial. It's not just about getting the money. We'll get the money. It's a hard thing to do, but we're going to get there, because if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. We now have a plan, and we're not going to fail. But it's you, this group that exists here today, the alumni population around the network, the future people that join this ISU network are the ones that are going to make us successful. And I do not ever want to see ISU disappear. We've gone too far. We've had too much of an impact. And I know people talk about the space mafia, and I've advised our marketing firm, do not use that, because they're interviewing people about the space mafia and how proud they are. I'm like, do not, please, no. We're going to change that, but we need to structure us as having one of the largest global space networks and use that as an asset. And it's about storytelling. And if we can talk about all of the successes of you and how ISU in the background is helping you, great, rather than making it just about ISU. We're going to kind of flip that around. So I'm depending on you to be successful, because you're the best advocates. You're the ones that are the recruiters. You are the ambassadors. You are the fundraisers. You are the partnership makers. And without you, there is no ISU. So I don't want to put pressure on you, but I'm kind of going to, because I need you to be our ambassadors, particularly in an environment where we don't have the funds to go and hire giant teams yet. But we are going to get there. But you are the team. And we're here to help choreograph your success. Yep. Yeah. You want a mic?
I'll speak back.
Okay.
So John, you spoke about the hub and spoke model. So what does that mean, that this distributed network, does that mean for ISU campus on Strasbourg?
Well, ISU campus, there's a long-term lease. It's not going anywhere. But we have to seriously think about, do you continue to expand that office, so to speak? Does it make sense? Yes or no? Or does it make sense to hire teams in different parts of the world that have different functions? And as an example, as we talk about the alumni position, it's going to be advertised as Central Campus France-based or US-based. That position makes a lot of sense to be out of the US because it's a huge population of alumni that have resources to do give back to ISU, but still be able to maintain the global presence in terms of the functionality. But it's not about taking an office and keep expanding and adding more people to it. It's about expanding our team, but doing it in other parts of the world. And hypothetically, if you look at Israel as a baseball diamond and you think about, okay, the home run is this. We want a permanent campus right here in Israel to serve locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally that has a very special function. Well, how do we reverse engineer that back to first base? And first base is, well, let's get the documentation together. We know we got support partner. Second is, okay, what are we doing in terms of programs, events, and services? And then as things begin to scale, well, now you got to make a commitment into people. So how do you hire employee number 1 and number 2 and so on and keep it going to the point that it's a full functioning organization under the ISU brand? That's really the plan as we move forward. Okay, I have no doubt. I have no doubt.